Okay.
Hello, innovative teachers. Today we have someone speaking that we are very excited about. I know I'm very excited. I'm a big fan, so it makes me very excited that he's here with us today. It is Chris Woods. Hello, Chris.
Hey, thanks, Spencer. It's nice. I've interviewed Spencer on the STEM Everyday podcast, so it's great to have Spencer now interviewing me, and great to meet Naomi today as well.
You too.
Yes. And before I kind of have you introduce yourself too, I'm glad that you brought that up too, because I remember like when I was on your podcast, I was like, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, and you kept on being like, you should do it, you should do it. And at that time, I was like kind of against doing it, and now that I did it, it's kind of crazy to think about. I was like, man, that was one of the first ones I was on, and I was really excited. So that kind of gave me a little push.
I think a lot of educators feel like that, but you know what? Every educator has those stories inside them, that expertise, that stuff that they can share that can help other educators out there. And whether they're sharing it on social media or in a blog or in a podcast or a book someday, in a conference, however you do it, share what you know with the educators around you, even if it's just the educator down the hallway.
Exactly, because we're one big family.
Yeah.
Chris, you kind of want to introduce yourself for people that maybe don't know what you do and kind of all that great stuff about you that makes you so awesome.
Well, thanks, Spencer and Naomi. Thanks for letting me be on the show today. I'm a high school math teacher, and most of all, I teach kids. I mean, I teach math and I can teach science, and I love STEM, and especially those STEM ideas and being geeky and nerdy and all that kinds of thing. I want to make geeky and nerdy cool for the kids. I want to make education more hands-on and relevant, and even more than just STEM education. I want it to be relevant education, because STEM isn't just a class that you teach. It really is a culture that you build. And so I've been teaching for, a bunch of years, and I just love it. I love teaching kids and working with kids. And I love being able to share ideas with educators out there that especially need ideas about how to practically do STEM education.
That's right.
So what are some of your favorite projects that you might have done with kids, or ones that you're like, yes, this is gold right here?
Well, you know what, Naomi, honestly, the number one things that I love doing with kids is working off of their questions. Every kid loves to throw those questions out. And sometimes we know they ask those questions to try to get us off track and things like that, or be the real what if kind of kids. But I love those questions. I love when they say, could you do this, or would this work, or is this possible? Trying to find a way to build and let those kids explore those questions, because they ask them because they're meaningful, they're significant to them. So, just real simple, like probably my favorite one is we would find the area and perimeter of the bottom of a shoe. And because it's a great non-typical type of shape. We tend to always think area and perimeter has got to be a rectangle or a triangle. And if we do that, we limit kids' minds to what area and perimeter really is. And designers every day out there in the world are creating all sorts of shapes that are not rectangles and triangles and squares. So we were doing that. We traced our shoes. We counted up the squares on the graph paper. And one of the kids was like, boy, it'd be neat to make some shoes. And I was like, yes, it would. Let's do that. That sounds great. So I opened up the cabinet, and there's all the cardboard and paper and construction paper and glue and everything. I was like, see what you can build, see if you can make a shoe. And we spent a couple of days, and once it started to get like where the kids were starting to take a lot of time, it's like, okay, we got to put these away, we got to work on something else, but we're going to keep getting these out every time we've got free time and let you guys finish them up. And I didn't just have them make shoes for the sake of making shoes. There's all those lessons, all those questions, just going from 2D to 3D. And I had them draw their picture out first. And that's a big thing that gets missed a lot of time in making.
I wish I had you as my high school math teacher. I never did a project like this. I liked math, but we never did anything hands-on in high school like that.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but like, I feel like at least at like when I was in high school, like I loved math and I was really good at math, but kids either loved math in high school or they were like, all we do is just do problems all day. And like, no one ever did anything fun like that. You know what I mean? And make it like applicable to life. And I feel like what you're saying is so true to what we all should believe in education, is doing those projects we know that are going to make difference off questions kids are asking and saying, you know what, like this is something you could really do someday, and adding some application into it.
Exactly. Like Spencer, I'm looking at right behind you as we're recording this, and your wall is covered with pallet wood. Now, if you think about that, like, well, boy, it'd be cool to cover my wall in pallet wood, but how many pieces is it going to take? That's a real practical thing. And how many pieces can I actually get off of one pallet? And how much is that going to cover? And instantly you've made something real instead of, this many gallons of mayonnaise, and then we get 7 more gallons of mayonnaise, or the fake problem is we want to put a walkway around a pool. It's like, that's a great way to, do a polynomial, but no kid cares about that.
Exactly. That's what always drove me nuts. And like people always kind of like make jokes about nowadays. They're like, I wonder why so-and-so in the story problem was buying 60 watermelons, because no one ever goes and buys 60 watermelons,
And there's
for math teachers, right? Yeah,
that's right. The next thing I'm really excited just to ask you is, because we get this question a lot on the podcast, and people asking us in our DMs, and I bet people ask you all the time, how can I, use innovative instruction such as STEM or whatever in my subject area? So how would you guide those people?
Yeah. Especially all different types of content areas. Because if we just keep STEM, in a little STEM room, we walk down the hallway with the kids to the STEM classroom, and then we walk back, and now STEM is over. We're missing out on what STEM really can be in our classroom and our whole school culture. It really does take adding and finding ways to connect it to every subject. So if you're doing reading, there's a climax to every story. A climax is really just a problem. So problem solving, so maybe you say, how could the character fix the problem using this device? How could they use the things that happened in the story to change the situation? Maybe have them even just graph the feeling, the intensity level of the story as it goes from climax and then to conclusion, turning that into a graph, or maybe it's combining it with some sustainable things, and you've got kids checking outside around the school and picking up garbage, and so you have the kids write a story, and this is part of a curriculum I wrote for Literati, which is an app for taking pictures and picking up garbage around the world, which is a great app, by the way, if everyone checks that out. But you take a picture of one of the pieces of garbage, and then you write a story about how did that piece of garbage end up there. Like imagine a whole creative story about, that piece of gum wrapper was because, he popped the piece of gum in his mouth because he wanted to have good breath because he saw that girl that he liked, or, something like that. And you turn it into a whole story, all based on one little piece of garbage that you notice. And that's just off the top of my head with reading and writing. I mean, and if you're creative, if you're willing to just try some things and say, I can't connect STEM, but if you go with the mindset that I can connect STEM with any subject, work off of that mindset, then it's a lot easier.
I love that you said that too, because I feel like a lot of times when people ask me like, well, how can I do it? I think it's more the mindset thing. Like you said, like you just got to find that problem and find that thing too, that the kids maybe are like talking about. Like I know last year I did like a slime project, and when I did it, I didn't want to do it because I hate slime. It gets everywhere. Kids were so fascinated about, different states of matter, and well, what is slime compared to the other states of matter? Yeah. How can we compare it? How, if we change the ingredients of the slime, how does it affect it? And I just think those little things are going to want kids to come to school. They're going to make the difference in, the student's life, because they're going to be like, wow, I could do this, or I could do this. And they kind of see worth in it too. So I love the way that you said that, for sure. And I actually wrote that down to that app. So I'm going to for sure check that out, because I've never heard that until you said that. So
it's great. No, it is.
I love all that integration though, because I know we have other teachers who listen to this who are classroom teachers who are trying to implement STEM. And so you're really showing that integration across content levels. Like you're technically a math teacher, but you're really integrating all those content areas that are super important. And that's how real life is. So that's so amazing. Like it's not as complicated as you think it might be.
No. And actually, one of the best things that I love to encourage to every teacher is, say you're teaching history and you come across a news article, because if you're a history teacher, you're probably interested in history. So you read across a story and it talks about, them finding some underwater sunken ship or something from Civil War. Well, share that article with your kids, because that's showing think about all the technology that it took to find it, to raise that up, or to go down underwater and photograph it, and all those types of things, to preserve it. How did the water over time either preserve or rot that, or turn it into rust? There's so many connections, especially in like news articles. So definitely when you're coming across things or videos, kids love seeing things like that.
So you make it sound so easy, because I think it can be easy too. I'm totally like you're like preaching to the choir right now.
Yeah.
But what would you say is really tough? Like, what would be some of the tougher things about trying out STEM? Like, if you were to put yourself in your shoes a few years ago, what would be some of the harder things?
Yeah. I think, Naomi, that a lot of teachers, it's that confidence, that confidence to be willing to try something. Sometimes we say, I see a project online and boy, I don't have the materials that I need or the resources for that. Or I know it's going to take a bunch of time and I've got these 100 other content standards that I have to teach. I think those are probably the two biggest limits, the time and the money. For anything that has anything to do with STEM education. Granted, a lot of people now are like, it's good if you take time for STEM. But we have to be willing to say, maybe I don't have all the resources I need, but my kids are creative. They can use whatever materials I can find left over in the classroom, from the teacher that taught before me 20 years ago in here, and left them and they're still sitting on the shelves collecting dust. Or be willing to share resources with the other teachers at your school, or put a bin in your school and ask parents and families that maybe don't have kids in the school anymore, do you got extra Legos? Do you got extra recyclables? Do you got extra pipe cleaners and popsicle sticks that your kids don't play with anymore? Games are great STEM education. You take those games, all the pieces that their games are missing pieces, and you turn those into new games. So
that's cool. I love that idea.
I've heard actually, I think I've seen that on Chris's Twitter before about the board games. And after he said that was one of the things I put on my material list I sent home for parents. And I got like some of the most random assortments of different parts that the kids will use to make something so random. And I'm like, I would have never thought that, because I feel like one of the weirdest things we hear are like stigmas of STEM education as well. I got to spend $20,000 to buy, these top-notch things, when it's really, no, you don't. I mean, you could send a letter home and get water bottles only and be able to build out of that. Really, I mean, the kids are so creative. And like, even today in my class, we ran out of popsicle sticks. And
you ran out now?
Yes, that's the worst thing that can happen to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I ran out of popsicle sticks. And the kids were like, it's fine, Mr.
What did
Sharp.
you use?
They're like, we can use pipe cleaners, or we can use, and like they named like 5 things. So I was like, and that's so true, I think, is, we see a lot of teachers be like, oh, I can't do that because I don't have this, when really you can use anything. You could use board game pieces even. So
yeah.
I just saw the other day, it was an idea on Instructables. And if you haven't checked out Instructables.com, educators, you got to check it out. And it was basically an instruction. That's what these all are. They're like one-page instructions of how to make and create things. But they basically curved, rolled up pieces of like magazine, and like as you put water through them or something, it kind of like almost glues it together to make like these building sticks.
Oh,
wow.
And they, it's like, no, we may not be able to get a grant or be able to afford some things. But there's always ways to make and create based on what you got. So
yes.
That's for sure. The next thing that we were going to kind of ask you is, we're kind of calling this like the STEM Mastermind Series. So we're really excited about it and everything. But one thing is, we just want to know, as far as STEM, which you kind of have already hit this, if you could like elaborate a little bit more, what makes, if I'm a teacher and I don't use STEM in my school, no one else does, what should I be doing to tell my, other teachers, administrative, like, why is it so effective? Like, what are some results you have seen because of STEM being used in your room?
Yeah, number one, Spencer, great question, because I think there's so many educators that maybe have done some STEM already, and they're starting to see the benefits, and they want to share it with the rest of their school. They want the other teachers to jump on board and maybe collaborate and do some projects and things together as well. Because again, that's where it gets out of just the STEM or the STEMmy subjects, and you can collaborate with history, you can collaborate with PE, you can collaborate with so many other subjects. So that's the number one way to get more people in your school interested. Number two, be willing to just share an idea. Say to your principal or admin, can I share an idea about a project that I did at one of the staff meetings? Can I just take like 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Can I have one of my students come and show
that's really awesome.
show something that we did? Because kids sell things way better than we do. But also just be willing to try it and look for those teachers that maybe aren't real confident. Again, it goes back to confidence level. Sometimes we need to just copy a project that we see before we can create our own project. And I think a lot of teachers are willing to do that. They see a project on Pinterest or whatever, and they'll say, oh, that's really cool. I'm going to do that with my students. That's the great entry level to STEM education. So then once they've tried something, like the typical, like marshmallows and toothpicks or, things like that, then you say, okay, now how could you make it different? How could you compare it to something? How could you build a whole city out of something like that and talk about, city planning? How could you recreate a structure from, that we're studying about in social studies class, but just modifying those things after just copying those things.
Exactly. I love all those things you said about it too, because I feel like it's such a confidence thing. And, I've had teachers be really for it because I feel like, well, they got the confidence to do it. And then I've had, people be like, oh, I just don't know if I can do that just because I'm not very confident. And I think like you said, the best thing you can do is do something you're confident with a little bit first. Because I feel like we all kind of do like what I would say is STEMmy things in our room, no matter who you are. I mean, everyone does. They just probably don't know it all the time. As we kind of close out here, I wanted to take just a couple of minutes, and our listeners, we want to be able for them to find you. So where can they find you at? What are some cool things that you've worked on recently that maybe you can share little details about, and that where they could possibly find those things?
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Spencer and Naomi for having me on the podcast and being able to share just ideas. And again, I love helping educators. I love when they ask me questions. I'm on Twitter especially, but also Facebook and Instagram at Daily STEM, because I believe STEM should be daily. So that's why it's Daily STEM. I also do a podcast called the STEM Everyday Podcast. Spencer was a guest on one of the episodes. You should definitely listen to that one. But if you listen to them, I mean, again, just like you're giving a voice to educators out there to share their expertise. And then the other thing that I've been working on. Okay, so Spencer's setting me up for this one here. So because educators for so long have asked me these questions, like how do we start STEM in our school? Basically, a lot of the questions that you asked. And I got tired of trying to type the same 280 characters and confine it down to that little piece. Like, how do I say what would help them to build that STEM culture in their classrooms and their communities? So finally had the opportunity to write a book. And of course, it takes time. By the way, educators, don't write a book if you're just trying to get rich or famous, because that's not the point.
That's good advice.
Write a book if you have something that you want to share. And it might not be a book. Again, share your ideas with a colleague, share it on a podcast, share it in a blog, but share your expertise. And my expertise was just ideas about STEM and how to make it part of a culture, not just a class. So wrote a book called Daily STEM, available on Amazon. You can find out all the other more stuff about me at dailystem.com. I make resources. I make a weekly one-page newspaper. Again, that connects STEM to everyday things and help kids read about STEM.
And that's one reason, if you have Twitter, to follow him. Because I remember when I first got into my STEM position and I felt like super overwhelmed, because I feel like in the STEM world we can. Someone retweeted that page and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And I used like 2 or 3 things on it. And then I was like, oh, I could do this based off of what he said here. So then and then I started coming up with my own ideas, and it kind of bounced off that. And those little things are so helpful. And I feel like that's why, this section of the podcast is always my favorite, because first off, the people we have on here are always working on awesome things. And that social media, I feel like, is such a good source of like a PD almost nowadays. I would consider, like we talked about the one day, me and Naomi, I'm like, sometimes I feel like I learn more from Twitter than any other, I mean, Twitter or Instagram more than any other conference we've been to, you know, sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, and your podcast helped me so much too when I was starting out in STEM, because I came from being a classroom teacher with no degree in STEM, which I'm working on it. But it was like my professional development, like at the gym, listening to you talk to other teachers, because I didn't know anyone else who taught it. So you helped me a lot too.
Okay, good. And again, you know, it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you spend your time sharing your ideas. It's like the best teacher's lounge ever, because people are always willing to help and share ideas. Again, I'm always willing to help and answer questions, because we're all in this together. We're not in this to compete with each other. We're all in this to make the kids better. That's what it's all about.
For sure. And Chris, we appreciate you taking the time to be on the show and everything. And you know, talking with us a little bit today. I know I had a blast doing so. So we're really excited that you guys were able to listen to this episode, Innovative Teachers. Please check Chris out. We'll have in the show notes all of his links down below. And as always, check out our Patreon for exclusive resources. We can't wait to see you in the next episode.